am living the description you just read, Alexander, because somehow I believed it was at 1:30. So that's why, and yet it did go in the calendar, but so the confusion part of the introduction, I'm living. My apologies for being a little bit late. And I am very, very, very delighted to meet you all today. And I would love to be able to pronounce each of your names. Giovanna, am I saying that correctly? Tayana, how would I say that?
You can say Tatiana.
Tatiana. Oh, that I can say.
That's great.
And Marco, that's good. And look at Carl, who's coming in from the UK. Hello,
yeah,
Carl.
Carl is here. Hello, Carl.
Hello.
Hello, and I'm really glad Carl's here too, because I wanted, and I'm so appreciative to have you here. This is a first where I'm going to be talking about a book I've been working on for the past year. And it's totally a book that connects with all of you. And my time in Serbia, Jasmina, Agile, and Open Space. And it truly is a love story. But I have to say that I don't know if any of you realize that you wouldn't be here if not for, and I'm going to introduce a story of synchronicity, because it's really synchronicity that happened. And I'm going to go backwards on how all this happened, which led, I believe, Agile Humans to be born. It might have happened, but there's a big chance it might not have happened. And here's the story. In 2009, I was introduced to open space. And open space technology, I don't know how many of you are familiar. I know Carl is. I don't know about the others that are new here. Can you signal to me if you know a little bit about what open space is? Don't know. Okay. Well, it's a meeting methodology that is very, very different than what we typically do with a pre-designed agenda, and everyone has their presentations and their roles. And it's a way of really, really engaging people on very important issues to participate as equals. And it's simple. It's so simple that it's almost like, no, this can't be serious stuff. And it is. And it's work that's been done around the world for more than 35, close to 40 years. So I got introduced to open space in 2009. I was, middle-aged then. I had just turned 50. And it so rocked my world that I just decided that for the rest of my life, I was no longer going to operate in business and at work the way I did before. And I threw myself at this. And it was, I had to try and convince people, well, here it works. It's really simple. And I said, I'm just going to do it every month, whether I'm paid or not paid, I'm doing this. The gentleman that started this, his name is Harrison Owen. He's 85 years old now. And I admired him so much from afar. I thought, wow, this guy's worked with Palestinians and Israelis. He's worked at the UN. He's traveled, he worked with Serbia and Bosnia after the war. Like, he's done stuff in business, all kinds of places. And I thought, oh my goodness. And I started posting on the World Wide Web, something that I didn't used to do. I was very reserved and I'd be very cautious before I put myself out there. But I believed in this so much, and it scared me so much that I'd write all the time on it. And a year later, he wrote me a note. And he said, I think that you live in Florida, and I'm going to be in Orlando in about 3 months. Why don't you point your car and join me for a Scrum meeting where I'll be facilitating a 1 day of open space? Well, for me, I thought, oh my God. I couldn't believe that he was inviting me to go with him. I was that dazzled by all this work by him, even if he's a very humble guy. But, so anyway, I said, okay. And then I headed out to Orlando. At first, I wasn't sure if it was going to happen because I never heard from him again. Then I write him a note. Is this still happening? And he was at the UN at that time, and he was doing some work with some other groups. So again, I was so struck by that. And I didn't know what Scrum was. It was a 3-day international conference with 350 people. And I brought all the stuff that you need for an open space, Post-it notes, markers, all those things. Even if he said it wasn't necessary, I thought, I'm going to come prepared. And he said to me, you can participate in the conference for the 3 days. I made arrangements for that. So I was paying my hotel. And he said, you should look to meet a guy by the name of Tobias. Now, I didn't know who Tobias was. And I arrived there in Orlando in the morning, a little nervous, but super excited. And I walked into this place, and the conference had already started, and there were workshops all over the place. So I didn't see anyone. The people that registered me were super nice. And so I grabbed some food and I walked around, and I saw this room. And it had really weird things in the room, like it had candy and Legos and, you know, all kinds of things. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to take my little sandwich and I'll go sit in this room. And there was one guy in there. Well, I don't know who that guy was, but, you know, I'm pretty friendly. So I started talking to that one guy. He has this strong British accent. And actually, I thought he'd be here, and you guys probably know him because he was one of your guest speakers. And I adore him. So I walk in there, we start chatting. And then finally, I get to ask, who are you? He says, I'm Tobias Mayer. I look at him. Well, no, there's 350 people here, and there I walk in a room with no one there except these little toys and these Legos, and this is really weird. But and he says, well, welcome. So I tell him why I'm there, and he knows Harrison. So then he says, well, you should go to this workshop and this workshop and this workshop. I said, okay, whatever. And the first workshop he was sending me to was on improv, like theater improv. Huh. I'm going to a technology conference. I'm going to go to a session on improv. Now you have to think, that was 10 years ago. So that was really weird. It's not so weird anymore. So I just mosey on down, and I go there, and I participate. And then the session breaks off, and then there's other sessions, and there's sessions all over the place. And I'm watching all these people, and like, you know, I had worked with technology in my career. I come from manufacturing. I had a career of 24 years. I was very invested in having everyone have a place on strategy. So, and I worked with technology on the sides. They were cool people. They were nerdy. They didn't dress like us. They didn't even want to talk to us sometimes, but they were really fun. Those were the technology people that I knew. So I'm watching, and they're running around like as if they're in a playground to this session and that session. They're all excited, and there's a lot of energy. And I was looking at the titles of the workshop, and they were on leadership, and they were on, you know, productivity, but really with a twist. I mean, they were not about coding. There was some of that, programming and technology. They were like all these amazing topics. And I couldn't tell if anybody was in charge. It was just happening. So I was really struck by that. And the last day of the conference was going to be an open space. And I had asked Tobias, I said, hey, Tobias, we're in Orlando, Florida, and Disney World is right next door. Like, why the heck did you ever schedule the open space on the last day? Nobody's going to stay to go to that. And he said, oh, yes, they will. People really want to see Harrison Owen, and they are not going to miss this. So, okay. And remember, I told you that I brought my markers and my papers and all my stuff. Well, Harrison Owen's a pretty relaxed guy. So he didn't have any of that. He didn't bring any of that. So I'm glad I'd loaded up my car. And then Tobias said, I said, Tobias, we have to set up this room. And like, this is a big, big ballroom. And, you know, it requires some work to set up an open space. You put up posters, you get the chairs arranged in a circle. The staff in the hotels, they hate that. They don't know how to do that because usually there's a podium. So they were just like so they don't really like that too much. He says, don't worry, He says people are going to come. And sure enough, that night, 12 people. I don't know if you know Jürgen Appello. He's pretty famous in the Agile world. He was the one creating the banner on his knees, that big tall guy climbing up on a ladder. And so we had the open space. And there were tons of topics, and it was amazing. And I was running the newsroom. Now, in open space, the newsroom means that people have created topics that they want to talk about. The theme was scrumming forward, and they had created their topics, and there had been a whole bunch of meetings all day. And we set up a newsroom because people type their reports on site right there. And we didn't have the technology we have today. I had thumb drives and chasing around and printing these reports, posting them on the wall in that hotel room so everyone could see them. So it was a lot, 350 people, everybody's running around, and the technology didn't always work. And Harrison's trying to help me, and he's making a mess of it because he's not putting the things in order. But anyway, we worked hard. It was wonderful. I was like so entranced. And then Harrison whispered to me, "You're supposed to go home tonight, but I've made arrangements for you to stay. You work too hard. You have another drive to do, so you stay." So I'm really getting to the point of how Agile Humans is starting to be conceived. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I wrote a letter to Tobias. And I said, what I have seen here, I have never seen anywhere. I said, the future of work, leadership, and management needs you beyond technology. There's stuff that's happening here that is pretty darn special, better than what I've seen in human resources departments, in organizational development, and in strategy. So I wrote him that letter in the middle of the night. And I said, oh, by the way, thanks for taking care of me. It was a little personal note, but it was really about a week later, 2 weeks later, my personal private letter to Tobias was printed in InfoQ International magazine. And then I got a call from Tobias. And he said, Suzanne, how would you like to facilitate a 3-day open space in Arizona in the fall on Scrum beyond software? Now, you remember, I'd only been doing open space for a year, hadn't been paid very much. So this was like my first almost real better paid gig. And I was super excited and super nervous. And I'm thinking, I don't know enough about Scrum. And within a month, I paid $2,000 to go to an Agile conference, which was a ton of money because I really wanted to be up to the task, but it wasn't necessary. So before the fall comes, Tobias meets Jasmina Nicholas in UK. And he tells her, hey, she wasn't in technology either. And she had attended something of Tobias's, and he said, you should come to Arizona for this. It was the first Scrum Beyond Software open space in the world ever. So she said she'd come, and there were 50 people there. So I arrived there, and I was taking a class in Scrum with Jerry Kirk, and you've had her as a guest speaker as well. Oh my goodness, I'm just getting a blank. It'll come back to me if I don't force it. And you know her really well. And she was the one, Lisa, help me.
Lisa
You know,
Atkins.
Lisa Atkins, who also became my friend. So she was there. And, you know, Maria, she's also, you know, there's a whole bunch of people that are super, super, very, very well known in the Agile Scrum world. So we had this open space of 50 days, of 3 days, of 50 people. But when I walked in, and remember, I'm super nervous still. And the first face that I see is Jasmina Nicholas. She's sitting there in a room. I'm going to go take a class with, before we start the open space with Jerry Kirk and Lisa. And she's sitting there with this big smile looking, and you know how she dresses really nicely. So she's all dressed well. And I think, oh, well, she must be one of the organizers. Who's she, you know? Well, our friendship and the vision of what happened got born there, I think. And it was the same thing as in Orlando. We were in this really cool space with all these computers all around, and the room was not set up for open space. But that night, everyone participated and we set the space up. And we even had kids there because Tobias really believed that, hey, the children should come. If you want to come to this, come. And if childcare is the problem, bring your kids. And so they'd set up a little place in the side that was babysitting kids. So they were helping us set it up. So it was magical, magical, magical. I never forgot it. I never had an open space like that. And there were people there that knew a lot about Agile and Scrum. And they were so invested in it happening beyond the world of technology. The topics were superb. And we all left and went our merry way. And about a month later, Jasmina called me to ask if I could come to the European Union in Europe and facilitate an open space there. She was very involved in kind of on the edges of politics at the time. And I said, I'm sorry, Jasmine, I can't. My dad was dying of cancer and I had to be with him. So I said, Jazz, you're able to do this. Do this on your own. I'll help you out. And of course she did it. And later on, she did it again with Carl and his university in a huge, huge way. And then we didn't see each other until 2013. That was 2010. So 2013, she came to Florida when I hosted the World Open Space. And as we were closing the World Open Space, her mouth started talking. She got up and her head hadn't kind of connected yet to what her mouth would say, but her mouth said, hey, next year, we would like to host the World Open Space in Serbia. And so I came to Serbia in 2013.
I'm
and
sorry,
that,
Suzanne, if I may interrupt you, I'm dying of asking one question to you.
Oh, yes, and I was almost done, but keep on going. Yes,
okay, then sorry, but when I already interrupt you, I would like to ask you the question which is very important for that part you are talking right now, and that's, were you aware actually that you would talk about that as a part of some film or written book in the future? Were you aware of the moment that you are experiencing something which is book worth or movie worth? Because it's not the experience all of us actually have.
You know, and that'll be like the next thing I'll talk about, because I just wanted, and I know it was a long story, but it's almost like when I look back to that moment of me waking up in the middle of the night and writing to Tobias, it leads to an open space in Arizona. It leads us to just rejoin and me come to Serbia. And if I could tell you, like, and by the way, before I went to Serbia, Jasmina was at my house. And if you were in my kitchen, you would have seen we had a Kanban board all over the wall because Jasmina was starting to bring Trello and Agile and Scrum into the university. And she had 200 students and professors that she was trying to manage this nightmare. So I had no clue. I mean, Alexandra, to tell you, that's the point, is that, and I keep insisting how nervous I was, how I didn't know anything I felt, how it bumped into everything I believed. But I really, really think that all that happened, because also, I think it might have been on that trip, Carl, that you and Jasmina were making the presentation in Paris. Yes, it was. It was my first trip. So we stopped in Paris for them to make a presentation. And, you know, Jasmina doesn't come from the technology world. Carl is not a technology IT geek. The dream of what you're doing with Agile Humans got its origin, I think, and I take no credit, but from me meeting Jasmina, and she knows Harrison, and the love of this work and the belief. And so I could be moved to tears when I think of Serbia and who you are and what you have helped create. Now, the important thing to know too is that you're bringing a dimension that is more important than you know. It's called Agile Humans. What has happened in the Agile Scrum world, I believe, is that we've forgotten the human part. We're there trying to find the tools for efficiency, for productivity. Like we're looking for the recipe. Let's follow this recipe and we'll do the retro. Yeah, okay, that's okay. Go ahead, Charles. Yes.
Another, everything has another connection, doesn't it? So
I know.
because of all of that, right? I ended up doing an open space with 250 school kids in the middle of Wolverhampton, which was chaotic to start with. And the people that commissioned it said, he came up to me, he was this guy called Kevin Pace, and he came up to me and said, "You've not done this with kids before, have you?" I said, "No, I've never done it before." It worked, so it always works. So it's a good, sorry to
And Carl, in my soul, I saw photos, because you post them on Facebook, of these little faces of kids talking about big subjects and taking the lead. So it has worked with kids before. You hadn't facilitated, but it works superbly well. So and you know, when I went to Serbia, and I was telling Alexandra that yesterday, that people had said, "Aren't you scared to go there? And you know, there was a war and there was this and there was that." Well, I mean, I didn't even think of that. It was like, no. And there was absolutely nothing to be scared of. And more than that, I mean, you're in my soul, all of you. The city with students overflowing all over the city. I mean, you have campuses all over the city. Your parks, the friendliness of the people. We went in the countryside, another synchronicity, to go see where Harrison had hosted the Bosnia-Serbia open space after the war. And we went to this small town, drove an hour, rented a car and drove an hour or more, really in a small community. And when we got to the hotel manager that had been there then more than 10 years before is the one who welcomed us, and he didn't know we were coming. So my message was to say thank you to Agile Humans for how much you inspired my soul to, it led to me writing a book that I had no clue until last year that I do this, because a lot of other things happened since that are not in this conversation yet. But I just can't thank you enough. And it makes me honor synchronicity. And the powerful message that I had is, if I can, through my story, give you courage and vision to see something that's even bigger than what you do with Agile Humans and where it's going, the world needs you now and into the future. And I'm thrilled to see Agile Humans growing as it is. And I can say I wanted to bring attention to coincidence and synchronicity. And it often comes not from our head, but from our intuition when we're scared and we go do something. I'm going to pause now and try and get a little reaction from, do you think I'm totally crazy? Or how is it resonating with you? And I know I'm not the typical speaker. And it's okay. I can leave a little pause, and it's absolutely fine that I don't, I know that with my warmth, I kind of tend to, it's a little
maybe
embarrassing,
Suzanne,
like you say. Yes.
The good question would be, that's interesting how much love actually you are connecting with Serbia. I would like to hear What actually was the first impression when you come from the open space you actually mentioned in the previous or original version of story? If you compare that open space to open space you've created in Serbia, what are actually advantages and disadvantages of both of open spaces? Could you compare those two things? Are they actually comparable?
Okay, well, here's one thing. We did not do open. I didn't come to the World Open Space in Serbia. Unfortunately, then my mother died at the time that was taking place. So was that your question for the World Open Space that took place in Serbia?
Yeah, actually, that was my question. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
However, I will say something to you. And there's a photo that I have close to my heart that I have seen of Jasmina and Harrison together on just talking together, the two of them. It's a beautiful photo. But there are people like Tova from Israel, Christine, I think from Paris was there. And I heard that it was a smaller open space than what we had in terms of numbers, but the depth, and there were tears at that open space, and there were some really powerful conversations. So that's my answer to your question, that I know that happened, and I'm absolutely not surprised. But unfortunately, I have not participated or facilitated or done anything in open space in Serbia. And we were supposed to. We were thinking about it. I think one of the first meetups, I wanted to do it, but we didn't have enough time. So we did a kind of a Lean Coffee World Cafe style. So maybe that's into the future. And wow, oh wow, oh wow, I'm going to pitch it and say, would I ever love to do it then with you?
I think the thing is, Suzanne, it's quite a powerful thing, isn't it, open space? And anyone can do it. Anyone can put it on and run it, and things happen. And
yes, I wanted to ask, can you explain a little bit more the concept of open space, because you're talking all regarding it. So, but I'm not quite sure what does it mean exactly. So what is a concept of open space, and which open space did you lead with your with the children, of course? How was that? And also, Suzanne, I wanted to hear from you also regarding the open space concept.
Okay. I'm going to do this disclaimer, Ivana, right away, and say,
okay.
If we were to describe, I don't know if you celebrate Christmas, but if you describe Christmas and you describe it all in detail, or, whatever celebration that you'd have, a wedding, you will never be able to describe it to really know it. It'll only be something that you will try from your frame to understand. But what I'll say is that open space, the purpose of it is to bring people together, a much more diverse group than the hierarchy, together around a topic that is super urgent, important, critical. It might be something that you tried to resolve in the past and haven't been able to, so you need that. It's very much about invitation and inviting more broadly than you would normally. So that's how you start. So it's not just any regular meeting, although open space is just open space. We're living in open space all the time. It's the quality of our conversations and our contributions. So now I'll get to what happens. Carl will say anybody can do this. I totally agree. The thing though is that not everybody can do this from the standpoint of there's a facilitator at an open space and there's a host. But before you even have the host and the facilitator, and you set up a room. And it's very much like what you might do when you're hosting somebody at your home. You're doing it with love, care, and attention. And you don't have a room, and I can picture you can have it with 20 people, 500 people, 5,000 people. And there have been 5,000 people in open spaces. So in a room, everyone is seated in a circle or concentric circles. That's kind of unusual when you think of going to a meeting and you arrive and you're going to be sitting in a circle. On the walls are posters with 5 principles. They're guiding principles to kind of make you think, and they're critical to open space. They're briefly introduced. There's a law called the law of 2 feet with a picture of a butterfly and a bumblebee. And there's a sign that says, be prepared to be surprised. And that's all kind of hanging there on the wall. And I'm trying to create for you, kind of picturing yourself going to a meeting that you're going to be talking about a critical issue. You've been invited, you really want to go. You know, there's a bunch of people that normally it's the senior executives or whatever that would be talking about this, but you've been invited. So I want you to picture what it feels like when you walk in a room that looks like this. And then in the middle of the floor, there are markers and white sheets of paper, like big white sheets of paper. And the middle of the floor is really big, like it's a really, really big space. On the wall as well, you have a banner, a big, big poster banner with the title of the topic that you're discussing. And there might even be a question underneath because you're there for a reason, because you're interested in being there. On the opposite wall, there's something called the news wall. And that's where all these discussions that are going to take place during the day are going to be documented by the people that are in the groups. And there's also a little chart there with post-it notes. So what people are invited to do. So this is, I wanted to lay out the invitation, has to have a reason. The second thing, I wanted to give you a feel of what the room looks like. So are you with me? Can you kind of picture that it just, you know, and there's a bit of nervousness there for people because, and also very much the leaders, because they're going to be like Carl is kind of alluding to the teachers asking, have you ever done this with kids before? Well, you know, because people feel, come on, we're having a meeting and there's no agenda, like this is crazy, you know, just that in itself. Plus we're seated there. So everyone has this shared discomfort for people who's not familiar with open space, that shared discomfort. So then you have the host that gets up and welcomes everyone, briefly says why you're there. The host represents that invitation on this theme. And then the facilitator stands up and talks about 10, 15 minutes and gives the instructions of how they write their topic, how it should be short, how they go post it on the wall, how they choose a time and a place, because we've set up in that, whether it's in the same room or in adjoining room, breakout, pre-set up breakout spaces. That's all done ahead of time and they're identified. So the facilitator will explain that. Here's how you write your topic and here's how you post it on the wall. And then the facilitator will say, and I'm pretty sure you, or it might say, you might be nervous, but there'll be no topic. Nobody's gonna want to suggest a topic, but I assure you that in all the times I've done open space, that wall's gonna be full of topics. So then, you know, you just read the principles, briefly explain them briefly. And I'm not going into that right now because, but they're just like, you know, you get the hang of it when you see it. And it's nothing that is directive. It's just to make you think and to give you courage to, hey, my voice is as good as the person next to me. And I have something to say and I'm interested. So then you just do that. And then it's all on the wall. So within about half hour, introduction's been done by the host. The facilitator gave the instructions. The facilitator says, see you later at the end of the day. Lunch is going to be over there, and that's it. And the facilitator is done. And people go to that wall and they go to the groups they want to go to all day. And, you know, I will explain the law of 2 feet because that says that you're in a group that you're not learning, you're not contributing, it wasn't quite what you wanted, or if someone's dominating the conversation and you just don't want to be there. The invitation is you take your 2 feet and you move to, you go wherever you want. And that's being a bumblebee. And, you know, sometimes you want to go to 3 topics that are happening at the same time because they're all interesting to you. Well, stay 10 minutes in one place, 10 minutes in the other, go where you want. And I always say that law is so precious that who wants to have people in a meeting when they're not interested in being there, and how often does that happen? So just move, go to where you're contributing, and people get to learn, they get permission to do that. Or you can be a butterfly, I'll call it, and just go hang out at the coffee and just don't go to anything. And you're allowed to do that. So at the end of the day, people come back in the circle. By then, all day, people are writing their reports, it's being posted on a wall, it's being put there. And, ideally you like to have an open space that's more than a day. You can sleep on it, but in these times, it's so hard to get people to commit, but it gives them time. And what happens is people discover that low on the hierarchy, sometimes people had amazing ideas. And all of a sudden, like, a leader comes to that session, and you get to hear people directly, whatever, you get to be human together. So Agile Humans, it's a way to live that. And for me, Giovanna, when I worked so hard, I can pause here and say, it's the most that Carl can add some things if he'd like from his side, but to describe open space to people as a way of, igniting their curiosity to go do it, I've rarely seen it work. I usually sometimes tell a client, look, just trust me, we're going to just do this. Because
so for the open
different.
space, from the open space concept, so for example, you need to have some objective of the open space. For example, if you're a company, and I mean, you don't want to see the people talking about cooking, for example. So it should have, if we want to bring a lot of ideas in that circles, as you said, so that we can just move like a bumblebee, and to see our leaders to hear us. So it needs to have some objective so that we have a key results, right? So the objective, for example, for the company will be, okay, we have some broader topics that we want to discuss, for example, customer success, for example, the marketing part. So we bring all the people together, and someone, for example, from the customer success can maybe have some ideas regarding marketing. So is this the way it can be done? Or
yeah, when we did it in the we did it in a massive faculty, a huge faculty that had just come together as a faculty from lots of different schools. And so the invitation was, how do we work together and set the strategy for the faculty? What kind of things are important? So then we did the circle, and you have that same kind of worry that nobody's going to say anything, but people just come and they write their ideas up, and then they have the breakout rooms. But I think open space itself mechanically is about self-organization. Sorry, my Zoom just came off. It's about self-organization, which means it's quite structured, but not structured. So it allows people to have that space to do what they want to do. But people in our organization, we also invited some of the cleaners. We invited people, and people said to me afterwards, it said, that's the first time I've ever felt that I've been listened to by anybody. And these were people that had never spoken before in a meeting. And one guy said to me about 5 years later, he said, that was where we set up that policy that went really wide across the whole university about, I can't remember what it was, but it's something about student, it's like a student careers week where everything stopped and everybody had careers. And this guy's, he made his whole career on that. Now he's a rector of a university somewhere else, but that was his, and that just came from the open space ideas. It generates so many ideas, and it makes me and Suzanne sound like evangelical, but when you've actually, but you don't do anything. You see, as a facilitator, you just walk around the circle and say, here's the pattern, this is how it works, and then people just, because of the structure, people just do it. And as you said, Ivana, you can have it in a company. It could be, what should be our next product? Everyone could come in, or how do we market it better? Something like that. So, and then you get all these, because of the way it's structured, people feel empowered to be able to speak without thinking about the boss. And I did it with some school kids, just a very small group with some school kids. And you talk to them about this law of 2 feet. You know, so you keep saying to them, the law of 2 feet, don't forget. And the head teacher was there, and the head teacher took part. And in the first round, the first meeting, the head teacher had a group, and he was talking away and directing everybody. And I kept saying to them, and the kids looked really bored. So I just said to them, don't forget the law of 2 feet, next round, don't forget. And then the next round, the head teacher was all by himself because but that's okay too, because if you're by yourself, it means you've got time yourself to think about things and do things for yourself. So it's all cool, the whole thing. But it should be used more. The only issue that we had was it wasn't really followed through after we did the faculty thing. So the leader of the faculty probably didn't like what people said. And so she didn't take all of them forward. But that's her prerogative, I guess. So,
and Giovanna, though,
Yeah.
I'm going to take something, because I see it in your face. I see myself in you.
Oh, okay.
No, and that, you know, and it's kind of like the second topic I was going to talk about that relates to that. It has to do with the cookie. When you said, oh, that means they're not going to, no. But it's like the before and after when Alexandra introduced me, and he said, before I used to be someone that followed, you know, I was very, you know, very dedicated and hardworking, and you know, that was me. I got promotions because I got stuff done. I believed in teamwork, all that stuff, and you know, I wanted us to efficiently get to stuff. And with the more and more that I was in open space, the beauty of this, at the end of the day, when people are sitting in the circle, they probably won't be talking about the theme, even if they had great discussions on the theme. And maybe they even talked about cooking on the side, because the whole person shows up. And the whole person discovers the other person next to them on a human level. So conversations can go everywhere and anywhere. Yes, it was the theme that brought them together, and it does not get forgotten. But at the end of the day, you feel like where everyone was nervous when they first arrived and kind of looking at each other and what's going to be happening, at the end of the day, people are laughing. You'd think you went to a family party or to a campground, and they're just sitting there being together in ways that they've never been together before. So for me, with open space, and then Carl said something super, super important. That was why I so connected with Agile and Scrum, and why we need you so much. Open space helps us get unstuck from our typical traditional ways of having meetings and only including so many people, or only doing it this way, or only doing it that way. You know, it keeps us focused on the things that are the most important. But we have a whole way of working that is around that. Asking permission before we move ahead, getting you know, you guys of all people know the waterfall way of doing work versus, you know, the Scrum and the Agile way. Well, those principles apply to management and leadership as well. And when I got excited, I hit the same wall in a way that Carl's talking about. What happens after the open space? And a lot of stuff still happens, invisible or visible. I mean, can be life-changing for a culture and an organization. Like he said, the career day continues, and they source it to that. But we need, because your principles and values in Agile and Scrum, very, very aligned to everyone having a voice, and a whole bunch of things under the surface. So when you put the two together, you are helping teach people new ways of working, rather than, you know, limiting the work in progress, you know, a whole bunch of things like that. And it means, again, I'll pick on you just a little bit to say, I know how much you care to want to do a good job for the people you work for and the people you work with, because that's how we get rewarded in our job. Plus, we have our personal fulfillment. But as a facilitator, I don't care what's going to happen. I did my job. It was to show you what to do. It's up to you. I have no responsibility on outcome. And that's really hard. And that was the aster of me. Now, my job is to help you think of inviting differently, connecting you to other people that can do certain things. And then I have my life. So I can, be a little bit less, before I just was like happy enough, but I had no clue the type of world that could exist before I got into open space and got a whisper of Agile and Scrum.
Yeah, well, that is why I asked, because I was not really familiar with it. And I see that this can be really implemented in the work that I'm doing right now as a Scrum Master, of course. So
yes.
And I think that they're really, from this meeting, I really can take a lot of great ideas. So maybe next time, this will be the part that you say, the synchronicity. So who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, and it's helpful when you kind of experience it. And, my life was so changed. It didn't happen all of a sudden, like Alexandra has certainly captured, that, I write a story and a movie. And like what I did as a result was so different, because before, my logical and rational mind was really in charge. It was going to double check and triple check. It's almost like I was in life driving as if I'm in a car. I got my foot on the gas and I got my foot on the brake at the same time. And I'm looking at the rear view mirror. And, just like checking to make sure this is going to be serious, this is going to have results, doing a lot of work to help others, to make sure it all gets done. And I don't need to do that. And we know that in Scrum and Agile, like let people go do their work. And when we do our work and we feel fulfilled and we're involved, life is so much better. So I learned to let go, but it was very hard to think that the ways of doing that I got rewarded for in the past was the wrong way of doing things. Even if I was nice and even if I was inclusive, it was not. And I was able to let that go and to trust my intuitive mind now more. And instead of my rational mind being in charge all the time, I let my intuitive mind be in charge. And then my rational mind, I say, okay, I hear you. I know you're just worried about this, but let it go. So this too is part of my message, to say, we are of two minds. And we don't always realize how much society has defined who we are and tells us who we're supposed to be, to the point that we forget who we really are. And I just wish I had discovered this at your age, because I would have had a heck of a lot more fun along the way. And I would have gotten more done and more life. I wasn't unhappy, but it's just more fun on this side of the lane, even if you still remain sad, even if you still worry, but at least it's fine. This is a tough world to be in. And if just to tell you how dramatic this has been for me, I sold my house and decided I'm going to live on the open road. You know how when we have work in progress and we try and limit work in progress? Well, I decided to limit everything in my life. And Jasmina, again, kind of like came to my house to visit. And then she said, Suzanne, I don't know why you live here. It's too quiet. How dare she say my beautiful home where I hosted everybody from everywhere. And it was like in a garden setting, but it was really quiet. And she said, you should move. And I thought, how dare she say that? But it was a bit of a shock that probably it was time for me to move, but I had no place to go. I was not going to go live in a city like she lives in a city. So suddenly, synchronicity hit me again when I was camping with my brother-in-law and my sister. And I said, wow, I wonder if I could do this, to just sell my house, buy a Jeep, buy a trailer, and get on the road. And I sold almost everything and gave, and I got on the road that I started living open space. And the agile part that I learned is I was not mechanical. I was like, you know, I'm just not mechanically inclined. There I am. I have to learn how to hitch and haul a trailer, figure out tow weight, figure out how all this equipment works, back up a trailer, do it safely, you know, and I jumped in there as if I was going to learn the skills of my life. I was like, oh, I just discovered this like a little kid. I was reading everything, talking to everybody, asking everybody's opinion. It was like I made mistakes. I did things that, oh my God, I was surprised I survived. But I learned that any age, you can learn anything. You can absolutely learn anything. So that tells me again that in Agile, in open space, in Scrum, why do we exclude so much? The joy of learning and being excited as if you were a kid is amazing. And so I learned how much I could learn and how much we can all learn at any age if we can admit that I don't have to be smart all the time. I'm good enough now. Who wants to be perfect? So I did that for 3 years. And it was like, people would say to me, you should write a book. Because I get up on Monday. I didn't know where it was going to be on Wednesday. Didn't know where I'd be on Thursday. And then I went to visit other people's homes. I'd bring my trailer and put it in front of them. So they'd say, you're so brave, you should write a book. And I said, oh, what do you mean so brave? There's nothing brave about this. It just didn't feel brave. What was brave, I think, was to give up what society expected of me and to just do what I did. So I'll pause now. And I don't know if there's something in chat that I should check, but and I might talk too much. How's it going? Is it, do you have any questions?
Well, I'm trying to find the link. So if you, Suzanne, can share your book also so that we can check. Do you have any link? Not quite sure.
No. Well, the book is in final production.
Oh,
now.
okay.
So I am still
Okay.
finishing the last chapters. And, it's like has about 40 chapters, and it's a very personal book that touches professionals. So I was divorced. So I have a title called Divorce is Not Defeat. I have a title that talks about me when I was a kid and what made me a little adventurous. I have a whole bunch of chapters on clients that I worked with about different, in the Philippines, in Russia, in different places. So, it opened the door to a whole big bunch of stuff. And then it's called Open Space on the Open Road, a love story. Well, I was single for 20 years and I was so purposeful. There was no room for me in my life to meet somebody else. It was like, no. I've got lots of colleagues. I love my work. I got my family, took care of my folks, have a daughter. I'm a grandma now. No, I don't want to be bothered with dating around. And I'd have friends that would say, oh, Suzanne, you should start dating. And I say, oh, don't bug me. And I had met someone in an elevator 8-9 years before the World Open Space we hosted in Florida. And we had met in an elevator and I thought he was so cool. We went out twice and then nothing happened. He had just retired. So he had a similar manufacturing background that I did. So I wrote to him a few times, heard nothing, talked to Jasmine. Oh, he was so nice, but I didn't hear anything. So I let it be. And then when all my friends were bugging me, I said, wow, if I ever met someone like him, maybe I'd be interested, because now I was letting my intuitive side and my emotional side, and I didn't have to work so crazy all the time. And I didn't have to, I was enough already, and I was adventurous. So I sent him a note And he answered me right away. Yes, I remember you. And I was in Sarasota where we had met, and we went for coffee. And it's funny, I'll tell you this very embarrassing thing. Another World Open Space in Washington that happened about this time. And I'm sitting in this big circle. There's this woman next to me, and I said, "Oh, you're so spiritual. You remind me of someone who told me that I should start dating and that I was going to meet someone in my life very soon." And I said, "You have that same aura." And she looks at me and she says, "You should pay attention to that." And I'm looking at her. She said, "I was a workaholic like you, and I'm married to so-and-so, and he was there." I said, "You're married to him? Wow." She said, "Suzanne, you should pay attention to that." So in the closing circle, you're supposed to say, you know, what moved you in the 3 days you were there. And in the closing circle, I was thinking, oh, I should say, I'm ready to fall in love. But I thought, I'm not going to say that in front of everybody from all over the world. And so I just said something, "Oh, I'm ready to listen to my heart." And she looked at me and she said, "Say it." And I was freaked out. In public, she's saying, "Say it." Well, how can she read my mind? So I said it out loud, the way she said. And then everybody from Italy, from everywhere, they came to see me, "Suzanne, you're gonna meet someone." Well, Renee came back into my life, and so did COVID. And COVID led me to him and him to me. And we've been together ever since. And so that's the romantic love story in my life love story. So the book has some of that, and it has these other little things that are just saying, just press the pause button. Know that you're of two minds. You know, just meetings are like hosting in your house. Just put your heart in your hosting and then let people just be. So that's it.
So Alexander and maybe Suzanne, so when you will make this happen in Serbia again? Oh,
Well, Jovana, that was the question I actually asked her
yes,
yesterday,
yes,
because I agree with Jovana. Suzanne, you see now, I agree with Jovana. That's kind of main question, when it's going to be in Serbia one more time. So, or officially for some newborn time in Serbia. What do you think?
Well, let's go back to the issue, guys. Let's go back to the key topic. Let's go back to Agile Humans, Agile Human City, and all your plans and dreams. And take the time a little bit to just allow yourselves to imagine, even bigger than yourselves, this work that you do in Agile that the world needs beyond technology. And see, could you picture that in little old Serbia, which is an amazing Serbia, that they could influence something as you are already influencing a lot. And once there's clarity on the question and the opportunity, well, then that can make for a mighty fine open space. And I'm not attached to outcome. I don't care. Like, I care, but it's not my job. So I bet you with a good translator and a facilitator that I'm offering up, and I think that, and if we could have it over an overnight, so you can just go to Jasmina and say, here's what we want to do, and this is the monster that you've awakened, and whenever the time is right, will be the right time. But you know, I'm amazed by what you've already done, all of you, all what you've done. It's amazing.
I was just going to say, Suzanne, the one thing that I'd say all the time that I use from open space, the thing that I use all the time is the people who come are the right people. So whenever you put something on, you know, maybe only 2 people turn up or 50 people turn up, they're the right people. And so it's all, you know, and it's really a cool way to think about things. Right? So it may be the only 3 people in the world that are interested in that, but 3 people are interested. Great.
Well, I'll also say, like, I worked with New Jersey, for example, one example. 10 years ago, they had an open space, and it took them such a long time to decide to go for it. It was 2 days, and business, education, like a whole bunch of things. and they're going strong 10 years later. They opened space throughout the state, and their state, you know, was the place of Thomas Edison, and like really robust economy in the years past on innovation and all that, and they were losing ground. Very super worried about it. And even high school kids were there, and we had to refuse people. So while I believe that whoever comes are the right people, yes, I also believe that we can create energy, excitement, curiosity around a theme that matters, word of mouth, so that you can get a very good, cool, big group of people of all ages to come and show up. It is tough to do sometimes, but you know, I've seen it happen over and over again, that it's how we invite. Does that make sense, Carl? What do you think?
Yeah, you've just reminded me, because before the COVID thing, I was going to do one in the town where I live about green stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I haven't done it, so now I've been reminded. So I'm going to set one up for like, how do we green the city kind of thing? How do we green the town? What ideas have people got? Because everything tends to come top down, doesn't it? And top down stuff doesn't really work. So
can I ask you guys a question too? Like, you know, I'm there. I didn't used to be like that, to talk about my personal life and my professional life. And, you know, sometimes when I've been writing this book and I'm almost done, I just kind of like want to run away from it, because I feel like it's too self-centered, and you can't be writing a book like that. It's way too self-centered, and, you know, it's not serious enough to do that. And, you know, so you're kind of my first coming out party that I've been kind of talking about it. So does it work? And even if you say no, well, I probably will keep on going.
I mean, we are open for questions, if that was a question. You're on mute, Suzanne.
It's like, I just see such value for us to get to know each other personally and professionally. And we're so taught to separate the two. And I love it when we can all show up. So I'm taking a stand for that. And it doesn't happen overnight, but I think life gets richer and better when we do.
yeah, you find out amazing things about people just in the small things. If Alexander remembers, when we start the Scrum training, we talk about we introduce each other by doing random facts. So we come out with random facts. Normally you introduce yourself, say, I'm Carl, you know, I work at the University of Wolverhampton, I'm this, I'm that, this is my job. Whereas with random facts, you say things like, you know, once I, you know, went across an international border without a passport, or, you know, I'm a Taekwondo champion or something like this, but which I'm not. No, but, and so then people start to share things that you never knew about them. When I've done this with people at work, I've worked with them for 10, 15 years, and you don't know what they do in their private lives, you know, what they want to share with you. I know now that the person I worked with for 5 years is actually a black belt in karate, so I won't be taking, you know, making jokes about him anymore, basically, in case he kills me. But it's that thing, you know, what skills do people have? And people have all these skills that they never share. Like Suzanne said about the cooking, you know, people have got all these skills that never show. And once you know those skills, the people become more rounded, and you can be more gentle with them and kind, and work gets better, I think, anyway. But I'm getting on, I'm getting old now, so I'm getting all sentimental. So. But I like what you're saying, Suzanne. This openness is good. You know, I'd like to read the book, you know, but you can feel it coming through the screen. You know, it's always inspiring. And open space is inspiring. I think you need to see one being done before you have the confidence to do one yourself, because it is quite strange. Because it shouldn't work, but it does. So. Well, it should work. Obviously, it's going to work, but it shouldn't work because of all the cultural stuff you've got going on about, you know, how things should be, and breaking those down is quite important, I think.
And, you know, what's going through my mind, if there's a group of people, like I'm disappointed in a way that Scrum and Agile hasn't taken hold more in the world of management, general management. Now, maybe you can tell me that it has, or I don't know if you're doing this work mostly in technology or also beyond the technology sector. If I'm a little bit right, that it hasn't quite taken hold as much as it could, if there's one group of people that I trust that can do this with Yasmina, with Carl, with, you know, the people I'm meeting here, and the heart that I met, the cool heart of people that I met in Serbia. I can see you doing it. You know, what I've seen is the big consulting firms like McKinsey or some of these other Pricewaterhouse, or those big companies are taking Agile and they're saying, we're going to make your organization Agile. And then they take a few pieces from Agile and Scrum, and then they call that an Agile transformation. It does not include everything that's in the Agile manifesto. That's at the heart of what this work is about. At the heart of this work, when it started with these 16 people at a ski resort, I don't know if it was 16 or 14 or whatever, they were putting people first. They were, you know, putting the value of a product before, you know, a whole bunch of things. So I think when people stay true to what Scrum and Agile is about, and they use open space to help them, the world is ready for that now. The world is searching for realness. They're ready in little pieces and in big pieces. And it's ordinary people that I think will be the ones that can carry the ball forward. And why not all of you?
Great. I'm afraid we are close to the final of this meetup. So guys, if anyone has some question for Suzanne, now it's the chance to ask her before we close this night's meetup. And of course, I would like to say something to Suzanne, but I'm waiting for the very end. So before I'm gonna do that, I wanna ask anybody if there is any question. Okay, I guess not. Well, Suzanne, this was, well, so inspiring. Hearing so many things that happened to you actually, which changed your mind, your thinking, make you get some conclusions, and to create all those impressions of Serbia and everything that happened here, makes me believe that there has to be another way to take you here in Serbia one more time. That's kind of obligation from our side, because hearing all those things you said makes me sit with you, talk with you, and even read your book whenever it becomes finished. So thank you very much for this story. It was lovely, really lovely story, and very inspiring. And I will certainly leave this meeting with a lot of thoughts about, will I ever have experiences as you actually had, and what is my love story besides love story I already have in my private life. it's kind of main question for me. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to write you an answer if I ever find it out. So thank you very much for this meetup. And thank you guys, all you guys that you were part of this night's meetup. I have no anything to say. I'm pretty shocked and in my thoughts right now. So I can't concentrate to say anything else.
Alexandra.
And hearing Carl, of course, Carl's
Yes.
story mixed with your story. Then if I had any chance to hear Tobias' version, Yasmina's version, to connect all pieces of the puzzle and then to make some conclusions, I'm afraid of those conclusions. So I want to hear all parts of the story to create that story and maybe to give you my answers in future, what actually is my story. And I think all of these participants will think about that. And sooner or later, we will find out those answers. I'm pretty sure.
Thank you,
So thank you one more time.
And thank you because you spoke what my hope was in the work that I'm doing with the book, is that it will inspire you to your own life and to each other's lives.
Yeah.
So we don't need to wait for me to come to Serbia. It has nothing to do with that. I'm already in Serbia. My heart's already there. You posted me there. So may you all just let it tickle your mind like it tickled my mind, and I fought it like hell.
Yeah.
And just go with it. Go with it, because on the other side of those bursts of courage and letting go is a whole great world. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome, Suzanne, and we hope we will have you one more time to be our guest. Until then, thank you very much.
Take care.
Have a great day, and all you guys, good night to everyone here in Serbia. And thank you for being part of tonight's meetup. See you next time. Thank you.
And Carl,
goodbye
say hi to
everyone.
Barb. Say hi to Barb, Carl.
Yeah, she was going to come and say hello, but she's not very well. She's recovering from COVID.
Oh, geez.
But she's okay. She's just got
Okay,
like a sinus stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. This was great.
Thank you, Joanna.
Bye-bye.